Spectral. Wispy smoke in the air that looks really cool, but ultimately not able to hold any substance. Alright, Spectral is a Netflix original film. It is a sci-fi action thriller directed by Nick Mathieu, starring James Badge Dale and Emily Mortimer, as well as some other folks in there. It was released in 2016. It's actually been on my Netflix list for a while, and I decided to finally give it a watch. I didn't realize it was that old. I thought it would come out in the past year or two, but I guess not. So, it is a little confusing. I feel like it leaves me with some unanswered questions. It's a bit wooden. The characters are a bit wooden anyway. It's effects-based, and it's kind of basic. So basically, we'll get into spoilers here in a minute, but I'll let you know when. To summarize it, basically you've got like a military tech guy with a good heart, and he meets some real tough guys, some real military tough guys. They're out to save the day, of course, and then they team up because they need his help, and then they encounter some weird stuff. That's basically what I can give you right now. So I mentioned the characters being a little wooden. They're definitely tropes. I don't feel like I'm invested in the characters whatsoever. So if I'm not invested in the characters, then is this more like plot driven? And I would say yes. Except there's some folly there as well, and I'll get into that more, unfortunately, in the spoilers is where you're going to find me talking about why specifically I wasn't a fan of things, but also why it was better than I thought. So it's kind of just like... I didn't go into it with high expectations. I went into it based off of the little description and the pictures, like, oh, this will be like a kind of cool thing. And like, I don't really know what it's going to be like, but it is a Netflix original, and those are pretty hit and miss. And again, just judging off of the blurb and the imagery that I saw, I was like, if this is a Netflix original and this is kind of what I'm looking at, I don't think this is going to be too crazy. It's not going to be it's not going to blow my socks off or anything. And I'd never heard anyone talk about it before. And I was like, I'll just give it a shot sometime. It'll just be like an entertaining, fun thing. And that's basically all it was for me. Again, I'll get more into that when I talk about shelf placement. But yeah, again, I kind of told you the premise. And we've just got like these characters that are very tropey. They don't have a lot of depth to them. The acting is okay. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but also just like the script and the movie, the plot and the story don't call for that. You don't need that. I don't think if we had better actors in here, which I don't like, I think they acted fine, but I don't think if we had better actors, it would all of a sudden just take this to some new level. It's not, the delivery isn't the problem necessarily. It is the script and story, and it's just not... It didn't go as far as it could have gone. I think there's some really minor adjustments that could have been made that would have taken this to the next level, and I don't know why they chose not to go there. So, yeah, again, military tech guy, we see a little bit of him at the beginning. Not really any background, but we know that he's a good guy. We figure that out. He's in it for the right reasons. He doesn't want to get into, like, war stuff to, like, kill people, but to save lives and whatever. And he's really, really, really smart, but he's not like a super nerd. He's kind of more of the military background, maybe. Like, we know that he can fire a gun. We don't see any of his connections, if he has family or not, or anything like that. He doesn't have any close relationships whatsoever. And he just seems like a good dude, though, and a smart dude, and he's willing to go put it on the line. And then, again, he teams up with some real roughnecks, and then they don't like him at first, and then they kind of need each other, and they try to conquer the day. They try to complete a mission. And I feel like there's not a lot of conflict between people. There's a little hint of it, But I mean, I think you would have more of that drama, more of that conflict in something that, again, that had more depth. But this is kind of basic and a little flat. What is cool about it, again, I say it's effects based, is that, I mean, you do have some cool CGI stuff happening here visually. There's some nice shots and just like cool images. They don't necessarily make a lot of sense, and I think they lead to the confusion sometimes. Because, I mean, the movie's called Spectral, right? Like, we've got some stuff that these people are trying to figure out, and we don't know what they are for a long time. And it kind of leaves me asking, what is this? Like, how does this work? When you're creating some sci-fi based stuff, there's a certain amount of suspension of belief that maybe you're going into, or something fantasy or whatever. But with sci-fi, more so, it's based off of only like technology that we can think of. If we can think of it, we can put it in there. You know what I mean? Like, so it's based off of things that we somehow know and understand to a degree, and then that's twisted into a bit to become like future technological stuff sometimes that we've never heard of before until someone else like thought of that. Whatever. Anyway, I'm trying to say that we're talking about science fiction, things where this has like a technological component, but for one, it seems like we can never follow it. Like, they say a bunch of words and you're like, okay, thanks for making me understand that. I didn't get it at all. But also, it's just kind of like, there's a lot of holes. They give you like pieces of information that don't follow up with, they don't follow up with how that's relevant or how it works or why that was done or why it didn't work, or what really is the purpose and function of this. Like, there's just a lot of holes in there. So it's cool. It's kind of light. It's not extreme in either end of it, which is why I give it some criticism. We'll get to that right away. I guess I would say the film is for people who are into cool visual effects with a slightly creepy edge, but it's definitely not horror related. It's not scary. It just has a slight creep factor. It's not heavy. It's kind of like a light shoot 'em up with a sci-fi twist. It's not an important film by any means, and its function, I believe, is just more so entertainment. There's not much going on cerebrally here. It almost opens a door for further discussion, some really cool conversation that can come out of it, but it just doesn't quite get there, and that's my problem with it. Like, it doesn't quite get anywhere. It doesn't quite get anywhere, like, fully. That's the thing. I would just put it. This is a tough one. I didn't hate this movie, but I would, if I owned it, I would take it off the shelf. It doesn't go hard enough in any direction. It's not leaning into the shoot 'em up aspect like crazy, like a lot of military films are going in these amazing, beautifully shot action sequences, and like they're telling a story of war and whatever. And this doesn't really do that. It's not extreme action. It's not extreme or hard sci-fi. It's not telling any like deep family tale or drama, or it doesn't get introspective. It's just not doing any one thing really well. It's doing a bunch of different things really mediocre. So for me, it doesn't have any rewatch value. I wouldn't suggest anyone be like, oh, you should go watch this. Like, if you like those other elements that I mentioned, you should watch it, but it's not for me because it just doesn't go hard enough. I'm gonna mention there's some slight tweaks they could make. They knock on the door of getting into some conceptual stuff that talks about maybe mortality and spirituality and some theology possibly, but especially it like is really close to just getting into like things of like Ghost in the Machine type stuff, but it doesn't quite get there. Like it just knocks on the door very lightly, and we don't see that door opened. And like, if you are with someone else who is interested in that conversation and you're both more advanced, I would say you could have that conversation, and this kind of brings it up for you, but it brings it up for you in a way of criticizing the film for not actually going there, and then you've got to go there yourself. I don't think it's doing that on purpose. I think it just kind of missed the mark. I think that if they did explore that, it wouldn't have taken very long, and that it would have made the film much more interesting. But everything was just kind of half done here, and that's why for me it is off the shelf. It's not horrible. Like it's really close to staying on the shelf, but the very bottom. But like, there's just no reason. Like, I'm just like, it's. If you want an entertaining movie, I can give you a better movie that's much more entertaining, that also does not have a lot of depth to it, but it's more entertaining than this. I have a handful of other films I could give you along these lines that are just better, but this just wasn't any. It wasn't just pure entertainment, pure action, pure sci-fi, pure fun. It wasn't at all in depth or introspective or conceptual enough to go there. So I'm just I don't really have a place for it. So, again, it could be fun, but I mean, there's only so many movies in so little time, right? I mean, by fun, it could be entertaining. Like, I watched it, and I was interested in it to keep watching it, and I was hoping they were going to go somewhere, and for a second, I thought they were going to, but they didn't. So, spoilers. Right here are the spoilers. So, there's a moment really close to the end. I guess before we get there, basically these spectral things. There's this myth. There's this legend. What are they? Moldova. I don't remember where they are. And there's this legend of like spirits who are basically inhabiting the space because they're left over from the war, and they're in like a kind of limbo, and like they're whatever. So there's this legend going on in the background. They don't really fully explore that. It's like a possibility. Someone thinks they're weaponry. Someone like whatever. They're the ghosts. And then you find out that they're kind of a combination of both of those things. But again, they don't fully explore that enough. Once they realize, like, okay, these things that are attacking people, whatever, they have been manufactured on purpose to be used as weapons, but they've been like, their consciousness, their brainstem and stuff has been like scanned from a real person and kept alive somewhat. But then someone argues like this isn't life, but they just don't argue it much. I'm going to give you the quote right here, because this is what I started to get excited about, and then it fell flat. They're not alive. They're not dead. They're just trapped somewhere in between. Then there's some other stuff said. And then he ends off with, maybe there are some things science can't answer. And that's supposed to be like this mic drop moment of like, oh snap, like he's this crazy scientist, and he's like, maybe there's some stuff, like you already knew that he had a heart, so that's not a big thing, but it's like, oh, maybe there's some things science can't answer, but they just don't go into that enough. They don't go into the ghost in the machine thing. They don't go into what is consciousness, what is life, what is not life. Like, those are things they could have got into before then, definitely during that scene or after, and I think it would have made the movie much more interesting, because again, the movie for me doesn't go into any direction enough for me to be like, hell yeah, that was like a really good war movie, or like a really cool like war sci-fi movie, technological whatever cool stuff. Like it just doesn't go into that realm enough. Like, it's not sci-fi enough for me. Like, this is a great sci-fi movie. It's not anything enough for me to be like, that's what that is. It's super cool. But it's also not genre defying. It does not defy genre enough to be like, whoa, that was so many cool things. And like, it doesn't do it well. So there's my little bit of spoiler for you. And again, it was like entertaining and it had potential, but it fell really flat. Spectral.